Here to celebrate St. Bridget, and tomorrow, the 1st of February, is St. Bridget's Day.
Correct.
Yeah. Why is it important?
Well, it's important for several reasons. I suppose we go back to the fact that St. Bridget is the foremost Irish-born saint that we have. St. Patrick, after all, came from Britain. Mm. She also was a unique woman at a time when there were no convents, no facilities for women to express their own religion. She set out and paved the way, yeah. I would say, certainly in Ireland, for a religious life for women. Yeah. And she seems, for someone who was born in funny circumstances, and
what does that mean, in funny circumstances?
Well, I'll tell you the story, because this story is authenticated in actual fact. It's written up by St. Ultan from Meath, and it so happens that St. Ultan from Meath was a member of the same tribe as St. Bridget's mother. Mm-hmm. They were the O'Connor Brigade, they were known as, and they lived on the other side of present-day Dublin, down that area. But what happened was that there was a tribe, and I should say to you that in those days, Ireland was tribal.
Oh, yeah.
Unlike nowadays, where you've the McCarrs, the Quinns, so you name it. Each tribe occupied its own particular territory. Mm. And in the normal course of events, a tribe would extend, it would as it grew, as its family grew, so it needed more resources.
Yes.
And of course, in order to get these resources, they generally raided adjoining tribes, and this happened with a man called Duach.
Yeah.
And he held or carried out a raid against the O'Connors, and he carried off the most important thing to them in those days, cattle.
Yes.
But he also carried off some young people as captives.
Yeah. Niall of the 9 hostages comes to mind.
Yes, well, on a slightly different scale, but this was normal enough. In actual fact, the old Brehon laws even had a section devoted to the treatment of these captives.
Yes.
Now, often referred to as slaves, but it was a completely different idea than the slaves that we think about. Anyhow, to cut a long story short, in his what he brought back with him was this girl of the O'Connors, described as being very good looking, tall, and of regal bearing.
Sounds to me like Bridget.
No, this was her mother.
Her mother?
Her mother.
Who produced a similar daughter, by all accounts.
Yes. Her mother's name was Britcha.
Yeah, Britcha.
And she was put to work in Duach's household.
Uh-huh.
But in the course of time, it became evident that she was pregnant.
Now I get the circumstances.
And Duach, of course, was the blame.
So what is special about the saint?
There's a lot. Every country, I suppose, has their own particular saints. And we have Bridget. She's someone we can relate to. She's a girl. She doesn't have a big background to make her stand out in awe against other people. She's part of us. We feel at home with her.
Yes.
And I think that's the important thing of Bridget.
Yes.
Not that, in actual fact, in her lifetime, she seems to have been a very dominant character.
Yeah.
And she set up a very important monastery in Kildare.
Aye.
And in actual fact, it was so important that at one stage, in the early days, it was touch and go as to whether the monastery in Kildare or the monastery in Armagh, founded by Patrick, would be the primatial see of Ireland. It was
strong woman.
Oh yes, good, strong woman.
How will you celebrate her tomorrow on her big day?
Well, first of all, you would have to realise that we're talking about an area I'll try and describe it very quickly to you. There is a stream
Yes.
flowing through what we might call a ravine. And it's the nearest running water to the top of Faughart Hill. And Faughart Hill was extremely important all through history for the simple reason that it controlled entry from the south of Ireland into Ulster.
Yes.
What's sometimes referred to as the Gap of the North,
Absolutely,
or
yeah.
the Mairie Pass. And that meant that there was a gathering of households in that area. And in the days of St. Bridget, we're talking now about the middle of the 5th up to the middle of the 6th century.
Right, yes.
A lot of, as we said, Ireland was tribal, but their resources were also tribal in the sense that you didn't have Paddy here owning 2 cows and John there.
Yeah.
The resources were part of. So you would have had a common dairy. And dairy farming was very important.
Okay.
Now, also, St. Bridget is linked particularly to dairy farming. In fact, any of the old representations that you see of Bridget, you usually see a calf laying at her foot.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for a dairy farm to work properly, you need running water, particularly in those days where there was no plumbing, no nothing like that, right? So, this particular ravine, where the stream runs through, A, is the nearest to the top of the hill, and B, it's the most protected part of the stream.
Okay.
So obviously that was the site of the dairy farm.
Yes.
And Bridget, as she grew up, she would have been put to work in the dairy farm.
Yeah.
And that's how. Oh, right. Sorry. Now, so that's where this particular area comes in,
and that's the Faughart area.
That's the Faughart area.
Now, tomorrow in Faughart, what's going to happen?
Well, apart from the fact that we have 3 masses at this area, we have an oratory, we have a shrine, and we have a very, very old penitential stations attached to the area. You will have people coming all day long, droves of people coming all day long. They make the stations, the old Celtic church were great for stations.
Yeah.
And stations very simply meant that you moved from one given point to another, and you prayed at each point.
Okay.
That is something that people carry out on their own.
Quiet and almost monastic.
Yes. Now, tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, people will gather on the very top of Faughart Hill, and we have a candlelit procession. From that is about 1.5 kilometres, from that down to where this area that I'm speaking about, the St. Bridget stream is.
Yeah.
And we have had that now for the last 38 years unbroken, irrespective of weather.
Of course.
We still walk.
Of course you will.
And we have a first-class relic of St. Bridget, which is carried in the procession.
Owen, we've run out of our time. I wish you well, and have a great St. Bridget's feast day tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
We'll play you some music now before you go. There you are.